it is on the people around you, you
Yeah.
know, and always having people going, "Oh my God, are you okay? Like, are you going to survive?" And um, like it can be really heavy with all that going on around you, let alone just dealing with it yourself. And so, for me, I just think it was really helpful to kind of set the tone with the people around me on like, this is how we're going to get through this. And, you know, and we got through it just fine. And, yeah.
I think that's incredible advice. I don't throw my health, caution to the wind because
Yeah.
I need to be around for my kids. But, it's funny. My approach to COVID is like, hey, bring it on, man. I want to get it. I want to beat it. I want to build up those immunities. And I think I scared it off. Montana, we don't really have a lot of mask policies up here. And we do have it, but not to the level that California does. The whole time, like, bring it. I want to take this thing on and beat it. But I really appreciate your mindset. I watched my dad go through cancer, and ultimately he passed away from it. But he lived several years longer because of the positivity of the people around him and his attitude towards it. And it wasn't until he said, "Look, I'm done. I can't fight it anymore." Was he actually done, right? So I think that's
and that comes back to mental, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, where it's just like, I mean, and I can't imagine. I mean, some people go through the cancer journey for years, right? And it's like, yeah, but I think it does come back to that mental thing.
Yeah, he was 4 years. Speaking of mental thing, the power of belief systems and how it affects your business is something you talk about. Now, when I do coaching with my clients, our foundation, in my opinion, is our values. What are our values? Because once we establish our values, then we can start working our goals around that. And, that goes back to your belief system, right? And so for me, it's God, family, health, helping others, time for my family, and the last thing of my values is actually business and making money. And for me, that's been my guiding light. I would be interested to hear how you teach about belief systems and how it affects your business.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's most interesting, first and foremost, when you start to look at belief systems, is the simple understanding that everything we do in our life is determined by our belief systems. Right? Like, behind every action you take every single day, behind every lack of action you take every single day, whether it's in your business, whether it's in your health, whether it's in your relationship, behind that, there's really just a set of beliefs that's the driving force. And so I think that's the first step in this process, is figuring out, okay, beliefs are massively important in my life. And another way that I help people in business specifically, right, look at what are some of those beliefs that are holding you back and how can they get you through and how can you move through it? And I go through a long process with this, but I would say to keep it in a short, concise exercise you can do is I sort of take people through this process of, like, let's say, for example, in 2020, let's say you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How did you show up in your business on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Some of us showed up at a 2, some of us showed up at an 8. Right. And this is just really a moment to look at on a scale of 1 to 10 in accordance to your fullest potential, in accordance to everything that you could do on this planet. Where did you show up? And then we begin to ask questions like, what held you back from getting to that level 10? Like, what stopped you from showing up at your fullest potential? And oftentimes what happens here is, there's a full range of different things that can show up. It could be, some people go, at another time. Some people say, maybe fear showed up for some people. They're like, I really wanted to push my business, but I had a little bit of fear of if it was going to fail. Some people, it's, procrastination, all these different things that can show up. And a lot of the time people go, oh, those are just excuses, right? Those are excuses on why I didn't get it. But at Tony Robbins, we have a different term. What we call we call it BS. And a lot of people, right, instantly they're like, oh yeah, it is bullshit. Right. But it's not bullshit. It's a belief system. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's that sometimes there's these belief systems that we believe are why we haven't gotten the results we want. But the reality is, if we can shift that belief system, then that can start to knock down the pillars, knock down the dominoes, so that we can create the results we want. So I would say those are kind of a couple things that you can do to kind of figure out, like, what are those belief systems that are showing up? Because a lot of the time unfortunately, they're like unconscious, right? We're not thinking, oh, the reason I'm not doing this is because, well, obviously I have this belief system that's this and that, and that's why I don't act like that. So we got to kind of do some deep work and discover what are those belief systems. And then once we do that, then it comes to the powerful process of how can we essentially build leverage on ourselves, enough leverage so that we force ourselves to change.
I love that. I'm a part of the Arte Syndicate, founded by Andy Frisella and Ed Milet. Great guys, great syndicate. But they just did this questionnaire, and they're like, what quote do you live by? Write it down for the whole group to see. And I have lived by this quote since probably 1983, and it goes along with what you said. It is, what you believe is what you'll achieve, by Mark Victor Hansen, who's a Costa Mesa guy there in Orange County.
Nice.
I've always said that. I've always lived by it. Believe it or not, behind me somewhere on my desk, I have a cassette tape where I heard that from Mark Victor Hansen, when you used to play cassette tapes. And I've kept it all these years as a reminder. What you believe is what you will achieve. And, people don't understand the power of that and having those belief systems and believing in yourself and going after things, because if you can say it and be passionate about it, you can achieve it.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really interesting too, to start to understand around exactly what you're saying is, like, in life, truthfully, you'll never outgrow, you'll never out earn for some business people. You'll never out love in some of your relationships. You'll never outdo your current belief system, right? Just like you said, like, some of us are in a pandemic, and I go back to a quote that's by, I believe it was Henry Ford. He said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're both right. Mm-hmm. And some people, it's like, well, you think because you're in a pandemic, you can't double your business. Well, you're right. Right. But if you think because you're in a pandemic, there's more opportunity now than ever in some areas, so you can double your business. Well, you're right. And so it kind of goes back to that, and realizing that, our belief systems really are the driving force.
I was on a call yesterday with Ed Milet, and, he leads our group, and he says, it's 2021. Things are really, going in all kinds of crazy directions for people. And he says, it'd be easy for me to be sidetracked and get all wrapped up in what's going on in the world, between politics and COVID. He goes, but you know what? I'm going to double down right now. He goes, I doubled down last year during COVID, and the killer instinct in me says I'm going to double down. And I'm listening, going, you know what? I doubled down during COVID. I had one of my best years ever, especially being as an independent, business consultant in what I do. And I want to encourage people that are listening to the show, and I want to hear your thoughts. It's time to double down and really be passionate about what you do. And, there's always going to be things. Don't use COVID or politics or what's happening as an excuse for you not to achieve and be the best person you can be.
Yeah, I'm absolutely on that same page. I think it's interesting that in society today, unfortunately, we've almost taken on this belief system as a society that it's okay to not really be lit up by what you do in your life. It could be like, oh, well, what do you do for your business or for your work or your profession? And people go, I do this. And it's like, well, do you like it? And they're like, it's okay, but like, it's work. And for me, it's like you look at the statistics, 80% of people that say they don't enjoy what they do.
Yeah.
And my belief, need to shift that, where it's like, you look at the statistics again, it's like you spend half of your life working. So why would you settle for the fact that you have to do something that you don't like just because it's work? Like, the reality is we live in an abundant universe where you can create anything that you want in this world, right? And if you can do that, well, then why not do that? Like, I think it was Will Ferrell that maybe said this. I'm definitely going to miss whoever said this. I think it was maybe Will Smith. But he said, if you can fail at what you don't love, well, then you might as well try what you do love.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a true statement. It's like, sometimes we create these beliefs that, well, if I take this, it's the safer route and I'm going to make it. But look at COVID. So many people took that approach and were laid off.
Yeah.
So it's like, why not at least take this as a year? Like you said, double down and look at, what do I actually want to do with my life, and how am I going to make that a reality? Because I can fail at what I don't love. So might as well send it and go for it this year and do what you do love.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. When you think about what's happening in society, it's so easy to get distracted by that. And there's always been stuff going on in politics and, things around the world that could have served as a distraction in the past. But nowadays, with the advent of social media, our iPhones, our smart tabs, and everything else, we're so exposed to all that noise that we're making it more relevant in our own individual lives. and not really seeking the truth in our own little, environment or what we know to be the truth for ourselves. I'm curious, and this would be good advice for me even because I go down that rabbit hole a lot of times. And I think a lot of people are going down a rabbit hole right now with social media. How do you block out that noise and focus on your direction and where you should be going?
Yeah. So I think, like you said, social media, it's bigger than ever. There's more distractions than ever. I've noticed through my journey that there's something I've developed, and it's called the shiny object syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's like, especially for business owners, right? We may pursue a business and go to this and Facebook, if you've seen, what was it, like the social dilemma
Yeah.
Netflix thing or whatever.
Very interesting.
Right. Like it's feeding you what you want to hear. So let's say you're a business owner and you're approaching business, you're trying to figure out ways to grow or to scale. You're always going to see that ad or that thing that pops up that's like, oh, hey, like, I'm doing this and I've tried this new, marketing in my business and, we 10x'd overnight and, we can teach you how to do this. And what you don't understand is that like behind that 2 days that it took them to 10x their business, well, there was 10 or 20 years of marketing experience.
Yeah.
And so, and it's kind of sad that like in a lot of these things we're exposed to now, there's this shiny object syndrome where it's like, well, you can do this, you can do that, you can make this happen tomorrow, today, in 24 hours. And I've just developed such a belief that like everything you pursue in life, it's going to take longer than you expected it to. Mm-hmm. And be ready to put in the work, be ready to put in the energy, the time, the focus, the sweat, whatever it takes. And if you're willing to put that in whatever you pursue, these shiny objects will come to you, but you got to build what my mentor used to call rhino skin, like a rhino skin so thick you could shoot it with a bullet, it won't penetrate it. So you got to start to focus down a lane. And even though these shiny objects approach you, understand that whatever you pursue, that's going to take time. And then once you give that time, then maybe you figure out after you've put some time and real sweat equity into that, do you want to try something else and pivot? But I would just say it's understanding that there are so many shiny objects out there now that make you think that it's not going to take work. And the reality is it's going to take work. It's going to take a lot of work. And you just gotta be willing to put your head down.
I'm glad you brought up The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, it's worth watching because we all spend a lot of time on our social media. And The Social Dilemma is a lot about how social media was established. I wouldn't consider it a conspiracy theory type show. I mean, there's some very valid interviews on there, and there's a lot of reality to what they're talking about. And Stu, you kind of mentioned it. If I'm on my computer and I'm searching for new tires for my car, I'll be on my my Instagram 4 hours later at the grocery store, and all of a sudden new tires for sale are on my Instagram.
Yeah,
like, how did they know? That's basically what they're talking about, and it's throwing those shiny objects at you. And I think it's a poor use of our time to be chasing those shiny objects, especially when they're capturing our attention for things that we're passionate about. Especially during like a political cycle or a pandemic cycle, that they can really run you down a rabbit hole. And I think what Ed Milet was trying to say is I'm going to ignore the noise. I'm going to double down on my business and what I do for people and really stay focused. And I think that's great advice from him to all of us, is let's focus on what's important to us. Stu, you talked about belief systems and aligning those belief systems. Obviously it's something you teach. Can you talk a little bit about your programming and how people can get involved with what you do and where to find all that stuff?
Yeah, totally. So at Finding Direction, our real mission is to really switch that statistics from 80% of people don't enjoy what they do to 80% of people waking up, pinching themselves, going, holy crap, I can't believe this is what I get to do. Because again, we're in an abundant universe. You can absolutely live like that. And if we go back to belief systems just for a moment, like you're saying, that is ultimately a belief system that you have, right? Do you believe that you can live a life that you wake up every day pinching yourself going, this is life? Or is your belief system that, only the few can do that? Mm-hmm. But what we teach at Finding Direction University, and if people want to get a hold of us, we have a free resource people can get a hold of. It's called 3 Steps to Finding Direction. And if they want that, you just go to findingdirectionuniversity.com/3steps. It's findingdirectionuniversity.com/3steps. And it's a free, basically, ebook we've created on 3 steps to finding direction. And I would say now more than ever, with all this noise and all this stuff going on in the world, this can really help people kind of get clarity in their life on what do I want to focus on this year and how can I make